All right. It's Chapo, friends. A little while ago, we did a movie episode about a sort of a Netflix original picture that's flagrant Oscar bait, if there even is going to be an Oscars this year. But it was The Trial of the Chicago 7, which at least in my opinion, was a very stupid movie made by a dumb asshole that nonetheless was pretty entertaining. It was an enjoyable watch despite all of the things.
It had some momentum.
Yeah. It had some sizzle, had some good performances. It was fun. It was entertaining despite being a sort of travesty of history and a reflection of the creator's rather blinkered and idiotic worldview. For today's episode, we're giving you another Netflix original movie that is another flagrant, absolute, just begging for an Oscar for this year. I'm talking, of course, about Hillbilly Elegy. And to do this, to do a deep dive into the world of Hillbilly Elegy and J.D. Vance, we've brought along, of course, Matt and Amber. But finally, long time coming, been chefing this up in the kitchen for a while, we are joined by, of course, the experts on all things Trill and Hill, the Trillbillies, Tom and Terrence. What's going on, fellas?
Thanks for having us, Sean. This is great.
Just sitting in Appalachia.
Well, okay. Guys, I just want to kick things off. I mean, obviously, I wanted to have a couple Kentucky boys on to bring some real juice, some real knowledge to this film about Appalachian life. But then I found out that probably less than 5 minutes of this movie actually takes place in Kentucky. So I don't know why you guys are here. Can we get Murder Brian on the line, or just Chris? He's from Southern Ohio. 95%.
Yeah, you got Christman
in Middletown, Ohio. I got Chris. Of course, Matt lived in Cincinnati for a little bit. Chris is from South Ohio, and Amber from Indiana. So let me just start with Amber and the Trillbillies boys. Having seen this movie now, I mean, just what is your? How do you think this captured the culture of Appalachia and the holler?
He's like as Appalachian as me. Like literally, he spent. Well, he has like one summer that he spent there or something, which is very common, but like it's very common. Okay, so there are two types of Midwesterners, and this is not a Chris Rock bit, but I think Matt will back me up on this. There's like North Country people, and then there's like people who come from Appalachian transplants that came in during industrial.
The Butternuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I am from Butternut, so I have my entire father's family are all from Kentucky, and they moved to towns with other people from Kentucky and Tennessee to work in a paper mill or whatever. But I would never say I'm Appalachian. Like, despite having spent like a lot of time there, I really feel like he's stealing a little bit of valor.
He is stealing as much valor as all the kids I know who went to Marquette. Who went to the private Jesuit college of Marquette in Milwaukee, who said they were from Chicago.
Yeah.
From fucking Schaumburg.
Disgusting.
Aurora.
Disgusting.
It's like, yeah, I'm from Chicago. Yeah, right. You live next to a shaky. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, there was this thing, like, when I was in college, it was sort of considered dead class to be from the South or to be from Kentucky or whatever. And then, like, 5 or 6 years after I graduated, it started being cool. So those same girls that were like, no, I'm not from Northern Kentucky, I'm from Cincinnati, all of a sudden became these sort of dainty Southern ladies that like, to drink bourbon and like watch college football and shit.
Wearing a giant hat to the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, that's right. Just really got into it.
I do like how in the very first, though, like in the opening scenes, he gets his ass beat for being from Ohio.
Yes, exactly. It's a real problem we don't talk about is anti-Ohio bigotry among children. Midwestern that is insane. Also, if he's from the part of Ohio that I assume or that he insinuates that he's from, it is just the cusp. Like it's different culturally because there's manufacturing and stuff, but like the person I was watching it with, he was like if we met someone from like 20 counties over, we would be like, look at you, bumpkin. Please be my best friend. You're the most exotic person I have ever met. Like when you're from a small place, like new people are really exciting. I don't know.
Yeah,
totally.
For sure.
Well, maybe they just recognized that this kid sucked.
He did,
and they were
suck.
bullying him because he sucked. Because it cannot be stressed enough. This kid fucking sucks.
Yeah.
He's awful. He's a selfish little shit.
Yes.
Well, that's the amazing thing is you're supposed to root for this kid in his life to get out of there, but he exhibits no reason for you to root for him. He does nothing. He is for no moment does he sacrifice himself for anyone else. He doesn't show any personality or spark or anything. It's just you're the audience, and so you identify with him, and so of course you're rooting for him because he's you. He's a boring fucking dipshit like you are.
Yeah.
Well,
Just a
okay,
boring,
he also
selfish
believes
asshole.
himself. Wait, Matt, he believes himself to be smart. He does this weird thing where he implies that he's smart because he's failing at school. And the teacher at one point pulls him aside and says, I know you're smarter than this, that's a lecture that teacher, I'm sure, gave 10 times a day to various children. There was like nothing that indicated even that he was like smart and could excel.
I just my letterboxd review of Hillbilly Elegy was Meemaw and Pep Pep help use hill folk wisdom to help huge fat pussy get internship at the Heritage Foundation. That's what this movie is about. That's what this movie is about. And I just like
I get the. I was just saying, yes, the whole conflict here is whether or not he's going to be, frankly, a shitty son, leave behind his mother at what is just a heroin motel, which, by the way, he's surprised about. It's like, okay, the place has the lighting.
We'll get to that.
The lighting of a fucking, Edward Hopper painting, so that he can go to an internship. This is just the story of a bad son.
Yeah, how can you really trust a guy that won't piss clean for his mom?
I mean, Jesus.
How is that even a question?
Yeah.
No, I want my mom to lose her job. You fucking little sicko, because you can't take a piss?
Yeah, and no sense of like, oh, also my economic well-being is bound up with hers.
Yeah.
Just by way of comparing this to Trial of the Chicago 7, though. Unlike that movie, this movie is executive produced by J.D. Vance and directed by Ron Howard. So, I mean, like, Ron Howard is just very, very middling director. He's made some good movies, but he mostly made
absolute fucking
just sort of
like,
paint by numbers schlock.
No talent hack.
Yeah. And this is the worst kind of bad movie because it's offensively bad in like a number of reasons that we'll get into. But at no point does like the utter catastrophe of the filmmaking or acting really get to the point of being fun or funny or like truly absurd or idiotic. It's mind-bogglingly dull. There's not a single moment of like tension. Like as Amber explained, the entire fucking like engine of this movie is this fucking Yale Law School asshole going to make his interview with the big firm? Spoiler alert, he does. There's no conflict. At no point is he like actually have to choose between his family roots and like a career fucking, I don't know, at the Heritage Foundation. But because this is about J.D. Vance, I just want to share JD hopped back on my radar recently. I mean, we've talked about his book when it came out, but he had a pretty fire tweet at the beginning of this month that I think helps sets up, the sort of mindset of the guy who made this fucking movie and book. He says here, as a parent of young children and a nationalist who worries about America's low fertility, I can say with confidence that daylight savings time reduces fertility by at least 10%. I mean, does this guy just like not like fucking when it's too dark out or too light out? I don't get it. What's he on about?
I mean, I'm going to take the counter on this and say that daylight savings time is a scourge upon our planet, and we need to get rid of it.
That's why Indiana doesn't recognize it.
No, we fucking don't, because fuck you. That's why also we are an agricultural state, and we know that now they make the farm equipment with headlights on it. It doesn't matter if it's dark. It's got lights on it, right on the fucking thing.
Just going to, I think like the beginning, like the opening scene of this movie has like the funniest fucking part that like totally sets up everything that comes after it. And it opens up in Jackson, Kentucky in 1999. And it opens with like there's a sort of a radio preacher in the background. And he's talking about how, in this great and resplendent land of ours, some feel that hope and prosperity is out of their reach. And like this is sort of juxtaposed with images of sort of like toothless Meemaws sitting on a porch and on a rocking chair listening to the radio. And then young JD, the sort of like adolescent JD Vance, hops out of his grandma's house and bikes on down to the swimming hole. And then in voiceover narration of JD Vance in the present, he says, "People ask me where I'm from, and I say Ohio because that's where I'm from. But that's only part of my story. I also spent some time with my cousins in Kentucky, and that's where I feel the most at home. He spent like one summer vacation there, and by the way, I had to make a note to myself: there is not even cousin magic in this movie. It's just
No
his
cousins.
grandparents.
Because he has
That's even
no
lamer.
friends.
It's not like he was wilding out with his cousins in the holler, going to the fishing hole. He was just alone by himself, being a huge pussy. And then he's at the swimming hole, and he's just like, this is where I feel most at home, here in the hollers of Kentucky. And the actual Kentucky kids like beat the shit out of him. They're like, you fucking pussy from Ohio.
Yeah, it's like, where's this feeling home? You know what? You don't
they hold
actually
him
feel
under-
home at there. That's why I realized this is the movie. At the end of the movie, it's like he's saying that because the narrative is a college admissions essay.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get into school. He's trying to impress the audience like they're the fucking they're the entrance exam board or the law school guy that he's going to the job interview for. It's like, that's just part of my story. It's like, bitch, why do I care what's your fucking story? I don't know you.
Yeah. Also, there's nothing at the end that suggests, and that man grew up to
Yeah.
nothing.
To do anything, to write this book.
He went
That's
to the
thing.
military. Yes, that was his accomplishment.
His accomplishment is that he wrote about it. He is worth caring about because he got a book published that somebody made a movie about. That's it.
You know
That's all
what
the
else was
justification
going
he
on in
needs.
Jackson, Kentucky, right around the same time, and like this is the thing that made it out. Fucking Steven Seagal was floating around doing Fire Down Below, like, paying people money to like let me blow up your fucking truck sitting in your yard, that kind of shit. Next of Kin, I think, was
Hell
filmed down
yes.
there with Patrick Swayze. Yeah,
Hell yes. Hell yes.
Somewhere a young Sturgill Simpson was budding down there, but JD in the swimming hole is the thing that sort of
That's what
this
we need
place
to
is
care
known
about. Is this dork getting purple nurpled by his cousins? Fuck off.
So the real collar kids beat him up, and like this is the moment at 4 minutes 8 seconds into the film in which my mind completely checked out. So it's like young JD is getting bullied by holler teens, and then older JD in narration says, "Things can get pretty tough down in Jackson in a heartbeat, but Mama and Papa taught me that you never start a fight, but you always finish one." And then it just shows him getting his ass kicked again. And he's just like, yeah, my kinfolk says that even if you lose a fight, your people will always back you up. And then the film shows his grandparents saving him from getting beaten up and humiliated further, which is like this is the story of like JD Vance being a huge pussy. Like that is what this movie is about.
Yeah.
The dynamic
Wait
I
for
found
the
really
authorities.
weird and culturally inaccurate as well. Not just because like the bullying thing, but like when they were shocked when his papa like punched the kid. It's like none of my grandparents would. We're all just old people are just allowed to hit you. Like you are terrified of old people because they're not bound by the laws of man past a certain age in Kentucky. They will just fucking hit you and no one cares. And it's like, what is this like, chocolate war wild man's land, like tyranny of like teen boys that supposedly exists there? It was not believable, was my point.
In some ways, it was like the passion of JD. Like he just gets tormented and has his ass kicked throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
So I really did wonder, like in the licensing for this book, or for like when he sold the rights to it, if he had some sort of like clause in there or something that said like I have to be the protagonist. It didn't make sense when I saw the trailer for this movie. I thought that it would be a drama between Amy Adams' character and Glenn Close's character, and I was like,
Yeah, me
all right,
too.
Yeah.
with JD as kind of an onlooker, as a sort of innocent bystander in the whole thing. But I was shocked as the movie progressed. Like he's the main character, the most boring guy in the world.
Yeah.
Little turd.
It's
Who
weird.
cares about him?
But they stripped out the politics of most of it. I mean, this movie did have an ideological message. It had an agenda. It was very subtle and very vague and even squishy in its own right. But by stripping out a lot of the politics of the book, they just left the characters. And so it just was disjointed. It was very bizarre. I don't know. I found it to be
The
very
structure is insane. Like it's this
Oh,
Cuisinart of flashbacks within flashbacks with no narrative forward momentum at all.
Oh,
You
I
lose
don't know.
track of what's
The
going
narrative
on,
structure of
except
this
that they
movie.
smear all of the flashbacks in sepia, like literal sepia. That's how you know
Yeah.
this is olden times.
The sheen of this movie and like the color palette is exactly the same as Simple Jack from Tropic Thunder. It's the exact same fucking color palette.
It
and look.
really was.
And I forget, someone said it on Twitter, and it's not an original thought, but like Glenn Close has been around for ages, and she's been like a god tier actor. Like, someone who is, even if the movie sucks, is always good in, and like this movie was her monkey's paw wish to win an Oscar, where she's like, I need an Oscar this year. They gave it to a fucking British TV actress, and I was supposed to win it for the wife. She's like, I'll do anything to get an Oscar. Monkey's paw curls, and she looks like some sort of like gnome smoking Newports.
Claymation.
I gotta say though, the styling and the aging are the one thing that I have to give credit to. Like down to the glasses. My mama has those big fucking plastic pink LensCrafter glasses.
She was the only entertaining part of it. I would have watched an entire movie with just Glenn Close as mama.
Yes.
Amber, you're right. You're right. In like the 4X, like Walmart faded glory shirt over this, like the spandex waisted jeans.
Everything. And the perm, because like never gonna condition that hair, but can't miss a perm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100%.
And and the thing is, like, Terrence, you're right that the movie soft sells J.D. Vance's actual politics, and the book was very political, and like it was very well reviewed. But like, I don't think people should lose sight of the fact that like this was sort of, I guess, what they call a literary memoir that was very well reviewed in places like the New York Times and elsewhere. But the thing is, like, this isn't just the story of some kid who like had a semi fucked up childhood and like made good and is telling sort of an inspiring story. I mean, this guy is a dyed-in-the-wool member of like a conservative legal movement, and like is ideologically driven in everything he does. I mean, he's on Fox News every other night of the week. Like, so I mean, there's a political valence to all of this, but like also just from a literary perspective, I've been exposed to so many of these type of memoirs that I feel like I have a pretty good radar for what is literary exaggeration. And I feel like there's a lot of it going on here where he's trying to make like his childhood and family life seem a lot more precarious and fucked up than I imagine it actually was. And like, if we take it at face value, like, yeah, his home life was a little bit fucked up, but like in the grand scheme of things, in the sort of tapestry of American life, is it that fucked up or crazy? So yeah, like I just think like we'll get into it, but like a lot of this in the book and the film felt like it's either he's exaggerating or like the stories he's telling just aren't that impressive. You know what I mean? He's like, one time me and my friends like got drunk and did some mild property damage. It's just like, well, I mean, okay, like
no, it's all dork shit. It's like it's a nerd bitch, hall monitor nerd trying to make his childhood look interesting in any way.
He shoplifted a calculator.
That was the best part. The moment where he could have turned to a life of crime and like going to prison and shit is when he shoplifts the Texas Instruments calculator so he can do his fucking homework on time.
No, this child was never going to be anything other than a pleated pant lanyard bitch. Like it's born into him.
Yeah.
There's any attempt to try to make it look like, oh boy, it could have gone any way for old JD. It's like, no, it could not have.
And that was the essential thing about this movie, is that like there was no tension or feeling of like drama or anything about this question of will young JD make it or not, or will like young man JD get the job at the law firm? Because it's like, of course he fucking will. Like there's no chance his life is going to turn out any differently.
100%. The first little like outburst he has at the dinner table did not happen.
Yeah.
About redneck? About the word redneck? We don't use that
like
word.
he was so offended by the term redneck. Yeah.
First, okay. Yeah, opening scene, he finds out his mother OD'd on heroin, goes back to the table, is like, well, I better finish this dinner. This is I better rub elbows. He's a piece of shit, by the way. And then all of a sudden he has
really
this
is.
weird kind of like national pride, and he's like, we don't use that word. Yes, we do. Everyone used it. Like, it's on bumper stickers.
Right.
There's not even a generation of people for whom redneck is some kind of a slur.
It's very weird.
Yeah, so like early in the movie, like it jumps forward in time, and it's now 2011. We get a little snatch of a young JD in the holler back in 1997 in the Fire Down Below era, and then it jumps ahead 14 years in the future. And JD, he's grown up. He's a hard worker. He's a slop jockey by night at a local restaurant to pay for Yale Law School by day. And he says the road to Yale Law is rocky, but there's only one way through. So like he's already this hyper ambitious guy, and he's got a girlfriend, and he's got he's on his way to a career in DC. And then so he's going to this like Yale Law School event where you're supposed to rub elbows with all these partners at a firm to get you an internship, to get you on the way, climb that ladder on the road to success. And he's just like, I think he really plays up the idea that there's two different kinds of white wine, and he's just like, y'all, I don't even know about this. Y'all got Mountain Dew or something? And he's all like freaked out because he doesn't know what forks to use. And I'm just saying I don't find it credible that he could have gotten all the way to Yale Law School and been
lying.
that fucking perplexed by a wine selection.
Why are there so many fucking forks, Usha?
If he was that perplexed by that shit, he wouldn't have been in that position.
He's lying in such a way that is intended to appeal to pitying liberal audiences because he knows it's what they want to hear. It's this
just
horrible,
like they want to hear him get offended
thing.
by redneck.
Yeah,
they want to hear him be like, "No, that's my lived identity. You can't say that word."
Yeah, that's because I want to hear. It's the same thing as I bring this up every time, but the arugula thing when Barack Obama had arugula and it was in a salad or a sandwich or something, and then on Fox News, people were like, arugula. Is Middle America really going to elect an arugula eater? And it's like, we know what lettuce is. We've heard of lettuce.
It drives home at every point just how backwards he is, but it doesn't work. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the actor they got or because it's just false, as you said, Will. It's just literary embellishment. But they're just constantly driving that home, the fork thing. You know what I mean? It was just... Honestly, the movie is about a guy whose disability is that his grandparents are Appalachian. That's it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
That's it.
Oh my God! Does this mean I have a disability? Can I start talking about spoons now?
Yeah, you get extra time on your SATs to be a fucking hillbilly.
Yeah.
You can't just be a regular white person because that means you're bad.
Yeah.
So in order to get audience buy-in, you have to be some subcategory
Yeah.
that has been oppressed.
An
even if
ethnic
you
white.
didn't personally suffer any of the oppression.
Right.
When he had, I
Yeah.
bet that he did have that meeting, and I bet he noticed the wines, and I bet he noticed the forks. And you know what he probably thought? He thought, wow, I bet the hillbillies I grew up with would be baffled by this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He would say, my mama and papa wouldn't know how to wouldn't know what to do.
But that doesn't give him a little narrative arc, a little emotional thing of and something to overcome. So he makes it like he was actually intimidated by it and not just imagining what his relatives would have thought.
Right.
So as Amber pointed out, he's at this posh Yale law dinner, and he gets a phone call from his sister.
By the way, the sister, they totally went, we want a Jennifer Lawrence type.
Also, the sister,
Yeah.
there's a weird... I don't... Me and Tom texted me this afterwards, and we were talking about this. There's almost kind of a weird sexual thing between him and his sister at several points. They're looking at each other like... I mean, I know that probably wasn't...
Terrence, another stereotype. Another stereotype.
Here we go. Here we go. Well, they didn't really have his actual love interest. It didn't really sparkle. She was just this very beautiful kind of woman who would answer the phone and then hold it 6 inches from her face so that it didn't obscure her perfect bone structure or whatever.
Right.
You didn't care about his future wife at all, but you did care about the sister.
No, not in the
Jennifer
slightest.
Lawrence type.
Well, his sister, the girlfriend stands in for the life that he's pursuing. This put together cosmopolitan lady from outside the holler,
Right.
Who she's trying to impress and keep interested in him. She represents the whole world that he's searching for, and you're supposed to think she's cool because that's what he wants.
She's boring.
But once again, why should I care about this turd and him being with this boring lady?
Yeah.
This boring the lady from a Crate and Barrel commercial.
There was that one weird scene where he's at the barbecue or something in Middletown, and she calls and he's like, my mom's OD'd again. And she's like, oh, could I come help out or something? And he just gets weirdly aggressive with her.
Yeah.
You wouldn't fucking just preemptive. You wouldn't fucking understand.
Also, I feel maybe this is projecting myself, but I feel like everyone has had a family, having a family member with an addiction problem is not a super rare thing.
Right.
Anywhere.
Kind of anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're rich, it's benzos, and if you're poor, it's heroin or meth.
So he's at this posh Yale law dinner, And he gets a call from his sister that his mom just OD'd on heroin. And he's like, oh, but it's job interview week. Oh, do I have to come home? And she's like, well, yeah, your mom almost died. She's back on smack. So, and then he's like, oh, God, how am I going to think about the forks now? And then he goes back and sits down. And then then you get the scene where like one of the law partners is like, whoa, you're from Appalachia? What's it like to go back and talk to all those rednecks? And he's like, we don't use that term anymore, which was such absolute bullshit. But then it gets to what it was one of my absolute favorite line in the movie is like he's sort of being pseudo interviewed at this dinner, and they're like, so JD, like tell us about yourself. And he goes, well, like I'm from Kentucky, but actually Ohio. And then he goes, and then I joined the Marines and served in Iraq. Quote, it was a great experience.
That's what it was.
Really? Was it?
It wasn't the million dead. It was a resume building opportunity. It was a chance for personal growth for me, the fat, disgusting center of the universe.
But Matt, this is why you're absolutely correct in that this whole movie or the whole book was based on it's developed college admissions essay where it's like it was an amazing experience. I met lots of interesting people and learned a lot. That's why you should consider me for this internship. But another friend brought up a thing, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not. But one of the ways that this doesn't actually translate is that. Okay, so the book was intended for a bunch of liberals that want a kind of, a bootstraps hillbilly archetype to say, like, look, well, he did it, so the rest of them should really get off their asses. The movie had the tone of, like, some of the more expensive, like, Christian family dramas or, like, a Hallmark movie. So it's for a totally different audience. So it feels really weird with that stuff jammed in there. Well, because the movie was made for someone like my mama.
You're right. Yeah. The movie was very strange. As filmmaking, it is very, like, it's almost like they tried to do too much. There's two films here. There's what I call the Garden State plot, where he has to go back home, and it's even a rom-com kind of, because there's a scene at the end.
With
where, like,
no rom or com, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. There's that, and that whole sequence in the movie, 50% of the movie is this whole sequence. It all occurs in 24 hours. I mean, like, I didn't even think about this until afterwards. But this is everything that JD does in 24 hours. Drives to Ohio, goes to visit his mom in the hospital, goes to a barbecue where he sort of has the weird sexual thing with his sister, takes his mom to rehab, which fails, takes his mom to get her shit from Ray's house, and then almost, again kicks his ass.
Ray was ready to come with it.
Goes and visits his sister at Payless Shoes, takes his mom to a hotel where she tries to shoot up, and then he just fucking lets her cold turkey withdraw. Yeah. And then drives back to New Haven, does the weird rom-com thing, and then think of all the movies and TV shows you've seen that occur in 24 hours. You know what I mean? Like, there's a pace, and there's a feeling that you're in the morning, the afternoon. Exactly. You know that you're in the nighttime now, and, like, is he going to make it? What's going to happen? It was just like the way it whipsawed back and forth. It was just so disjointed.
Why didn't they start out that way either is the other thing that I was thinking. I'm like, what if they just started out with, like, I have 24 hours to get to this, interview.
Yeah.
Because at least then
cut out all the other shit.
And then backtrack to like, here's what happened. Here's where I am. I'm this way, and then just keep going back to him in the car being tense. Develop some conflict, some tension, because the entire time I was like, where's the conflict?
Yeah, it's so insanely inertial. It's like there's no forward narrative momentum. It's stunning.
No,
because you could have done this thing 24-hour clock at the beginning. Boom, set the stakes. He's got to get his mom, and then you periodically have flashbacks over the course of it. Instead, it's just the flashbacks are put in equally with the actual narrative, so there's no sense of anything. It's all happening simultaneously.
Who directed Crank?
Stuck in time like Billy Pilgrim.
Who directed Crank or Shoot 'Em Up?
Neville Taylor
or the Safdie
Neville Dean and Taylor.
Yes.
Right.
Have to like go around a bunch of like fent heads and jug hooters as like Howard Ratner getting your ODing mom to the halfway house.
Or even if this had been my cinematic vision, I would have went Warriors trying to get to Coney Island. Coney Island is Middletown. And like in New Jersey, when he's at that gas station, you run into the Italian mafia and they like rough him up a little bit there at the gas station. Then he's got to keep going though.
If there are avenues they could have taken for us to at least have some tension and speed and movement.
I'm imagining the TV show 24, where it's like what you're about to see takes place in real time. JD has 24 hours to stop his mom from doing heroin again before getting back for a law firm interview.
Oh no, he dropped her off at the heroin motel.
Right.
Which again, even the sister says, well, there's a motel,
the
she sometimes stays at.
dropped-
Why do you think she stays there? Oh, she has this guy who takes care of her named
Amber.
Bobo. He wears a big purple suit. Like,
Not just the heroin hotel. He flushes her drugs and lets her withdraw just cold turkey. Just
Yeah.
like, fuck, sorry,
That's not
mom.
dangerous. That'll be fine.
well, and
Yeah.
What could be the back?
he even
what
had
could
the
backfire
option
there?
of getting methadone on the way out of the fucking like. Also, most people do like leave heroin like outpatient treatment. Like they come in, they have their therapy, they get their methadone, they go home. Like what they actually need is someone to watch them while they feel bad.
Yeah.
They can take care of them and make
This
sure
is
they
a
don't
very-
do heroin again.
Maybe we can talk about this later, but I thought that scene was very fascinating. I mean, there's a lot about the movie in that scene.
Well, we'll get there, but like as Matt alluded to, like the movie is trapped in this incredibly let-in like narrative architecture where it just flits back between like an A plot, which is young JD being like a big fat pussy while with an unstable mother and like a grandmother who takes care of him, and then the B plot of like young man JD spending one day in Middletown, Ohio. But like, you know, we get some flashbacks of like, you know, Amy Adams. We get like hints of her being unstable, which is basically her freaking out after JD knocks something over like a big dumb klutz. First he breaks some Easter eggs, then he knocks over some like a tray of football cards, and then she has a meltdown where she like attacks him in the street.
They're also all shocked every time she gets mad. And obviously it goes into like darker places, but it's like, again, maybe this is a cultural difference, but like the first time she screams at him, people are like, Mom, or like, what? But parents scream at you. Like I mean, roughly 50% of parenting. Like it was just like this very weird thing where it's like, what culturally completely separate from my experience little microcosm did you grow up in where, at least in the initial scenes, the early Amy Adams, the single mom who is under a lot of stress, doesn't snap once or twice a week and fucking yell at you.
Yeah.
And
This
people
movie is
don't just
made
go,
by-
well, she'll get over it.
But this movie is made by and for people who don't do that, who have been trained not to do that, and who see that as not like part of living in a stressful life, but as some sort of eruption of instability, bad manners, and trauma. And also, more importantly, they have to play up the trauma of this to make this guy's boring ass childhood some sort of battle over adversity.
Yeah.
His mom yelling at him has to have to take a place of like surviving a school shooting because there's no actual drama in his boring ass life.
Very little
Which
bad
was a
happened
straight
to him.
line to Hart, which was a straight line to Yale. He was a fucking nerd. He was a nerd. He was locked in from the jump, and he was gonna end up where he ended up, barring some sort of catastrophe, which he avoided. So there's nothing really dramatic or interesting about his triumph over adversity. They have to make it appear that way. They have to give people in the scene signaling the audience that, oh, you should think this is a big deal.
It's the Lifetime television for women version of Tree of Life.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a movie that actually does scenes that really feel like childhood memories.
Yeah, which
Whereas
are not
every
necessarily
scene in this
traumatizing,
just
but
is
they're an
another
assemblage, yeah.
piece of Hallmark bullshit.
Every childhood scene is a parable. I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much every one of them, anyways, ends with some sort of moral lesson. Whether it's
Because he's telling them to his fucking admissions counselor.
exactly.
Yeah.
That this is, somebody said it was like, this is like one of those Christian movies, like one of those movies where, Kurt
Feature
Cameron,
films for families or some shit.
arises over his pornography addiction. And it is a Christian mainstream film where Jesus is replaced with a job with a law firm. Like that's the thing that redeems you from the horrors of your life and your travails is the hope of a nice, fat, upper middle class or rich existence instead of Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I
Exactly
found
right.
weird too, and we might be digressing too much? There's virtually no mention whatsoever of religion.
Right.
Which
Yeah, that's true because it's been replaced by ambition.
and also, yes, he converted to Catholicism for professional reasons, basically, to get in with like the fucking First Things crowd in in his 30s or something. And it's like, you're not gonna mention, like, I find it incredibly hard to believe that anyone with the Mama and Papa doesn't have some pretty formative church stories.
Well, he doesn't believe in any of that. It doesn't register with him. It's not what matters. What matters is selling himself to the people on the East Coast he's trying to impress and ingratiate himself with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what does religion have to do with that? What do they care about religion? Because he knows they find it at best a charming rural eccentricity, if not like a moral deformation. And for him, it means nothing because none of it adhered to him.
Mm.
So, like you said, like there's a scene where he does car pranks with his mom, and then she like swats him. She's like, shut up, you little bastard.
She calls
he
him
jumps
a
in the
little
back
fat
seat, and
ass,
he's
which
like-
is the funniest. I actually doubled over. There's
When
nothing
she starts
funnier.
beating him up and calling
she's
him
like,
fat,
you little
that
fat
rules. That's
ass,
the
like
best scene in the
calling your
movie.
tubby little male child a fat ass is the funniest. I mean, like, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying it was hilarious, and it was the only time during the movie I laughed.
There's one other part that I laughed at that we'll talk about later.
So his mom swats him in the back seat of the car, and then he like jumps out of a moving car and like runs into the nearest house, and he's like, "My mom is trying to kill me! My mom is trying to kill me!" And then the cops show up, and they're like, "Ma'am, step away from the large son. Step away from your round boy." And then like they put her in the squad car, and then it's just like, "Y'all are brutalizing me."
We have a 452 Caleb situation. Bring back up 4-alarm Caleb situation.
So it's like it's all like, will you get the internship or not? And here's another thing that I don't know if you guys clocked. Young JD at several points in this movie really is into watching CNN, and like he's like, "Grandma, don't turn off the
Yes.
TV. I want to hear Al Gore."
I'm
Shut up,
listening to
Dad.
Al. I'm listening to
there's a
Al
scene-
Gore.
Yeah, he wants to hear Al Gore and Monica Lewinsky on TV. There's a scene where him and Glenn Close, his mama, they're chilling in the living room, and she's watching Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and this little bitch is like, "Can we put on Meet the Press?" And then his mama was like, "No, I love Arnold."
Yeah, and you know what?
And then she says,
this is the
and then
thing.
she
Never
says
put a
she
better
has this-
movie
she
in
has
your
a
movie.
whole like life. Exactly, never put a better movie in a bad movie. But then like Glenn Close explains to him that she has this whole half-baked life philosophy based around Terminator 2, where she's like, you can either be a good Terminator, a bad Terminator, or a neutral Terminator. And I was like, what? You need to explain that more. There are no neutral Terminators.
But also, sometimes you become a different Terminator, and you can be a different type of Terminator on a day-to-day basis. You can change.
So this
really,
means nothing. Grandma,
we live in a
this means
morally
nothing.
gray world. So I don't know why the Terminators are really necessary for this.
That's almost like,
And,
if
like,
they
I'm
had
sorry,
that
the
dumb
moral framework-
sheepdog wolf thing from American Sniper, but instead it's like, so you got your wolves and your sheepdogs and your sheep. Sometimes a sheep can turn into a wolf, and sometimes the wolves will become sheep. And the thing about the sheepdog is he's always going to be a sheepdog, but on weekends sometimes he turns into a wolf.
Yeah. Okay. So by the way, I just want to say Al Gore is more of an actual redneck than JD Vance.
Yeah.
It's true.
But I mean, yeah, like the moral universe of the Terminators are that like you can either be a good Terminator or a bad Terminator, and that's pretty much set. Once you're on that track, there's no variation there. It's not like Papa was sometimes he was a bad Terminator, but then sometimes he helped John Connor. It's like, no, you're either good or a bad
You're operating
Terminator.
from your programming, no matter what.
Yeah.
You're programmed. That's the whole thing about Terminators. They
Yeah.
don't get to choose.
Yeah, there's some confusing Calvinist mix-ups here about like you're set in stone, but also there's bootstraps, but also it's just a
Oh, it's completely incoherent in that regard. There's several different, like one of the vignettes, the parable of the end. The Mamaw looks at JD and says, "Family's the only thing worth the goddamn." But then, like again, I'm jumping ahead, but like towards the end, he basically tells his family to fuck off. I don't know. It just it never can land on.
Well, family matters to the extent that you can use it to get into Yale and to get
Yes.
the internship.
Yes.
That's what
Right.
That's why family matters, because it's grist for the mill of your personal fucking ambition.
Yeah,
and
you're
to
right.
start a new one with a woman who you can be ashamed of your old one with.
Yes. Yeah, you can improve on. Hey, look, me and my cheekbone wife and our little well-behaved, non-fat children have
No, I've seen-
solved the family problem.
I've seen his kids; they take after JD. She is really beautiful. Like both the actress and the wife are actually like really beautiful, and there is sort of a like, how'd you manage that? I mean, whatever. I guess people just sort of like pair off in Yale or whatever. But
Yeah.
Here's the thing that occurred to me, like during the flashbacks, it's like the grandfather dies, and then they go to the funeral, and you see Amy Adams like pop a pill in the car on the way to the funeral. And then, like, the next scene, she's, like, stealing pills from her job as a nurse and then putting on roller skates and just, like, careening through a burn unit, like, high as shit.
I
And I was just thinking in the movie,
she's
like,
on opioids.
there's no real...
That's not how opioids work. You want to take a nap. You're not. I've never been roller skating opioids fucked up.
She gets fucked up on pills, like, really quickly, and it just occurred to me that, like, you don't really see any, like, progression of her falling apart. It's just you see her pop a pill once, then it's just like, oops, I got fired from my job at the hospital for fucking doing a grind on, like, a fucking ER bed when laughing my ass off.
Oh, he assassinates her character.
And then in the present day, like, a big part of the plot is, like, his mom not having insurance or being able to, like, get a bed in rehab or, like, seek drug treatment. And I just got to say, I'm really glad those experiences informed his later career working for the Heritage Foundation or whatever he did in D.C.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, it strikes me that a lot of the flashbacks, like Amber, you're right. It really does assassinate the character of his mother, because like a lot of the plot is about how like she keeps flitting about from like boyfriend to boyfriend. There's a new stepfather. There's a new guy in the picture every day, and a lot of it just struck me as like JD's like real anger and like rage at his mother for not being like the sort of like a perfect like nuclear family homemaker, and like it's just his anger at her for like having boyfriends and not having like a stable family background. But I will say, when she does marry a guy from her job, JD gets inaugurated into a world of cool kids.
Yeah.
Because he has like a cool stepbrother. And like the first thing his stepbrother does is like, first of all, his new stepdad has a framed poster of Casino by Martin Scorsese.
I saw that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. His new stepdad is really nice to him too, and immediately welcoming. And he just lucked into a cool stepdad and a cool stepbrother. And instead of like being like, "Oh, cool," he's like irate or whatever, and he's like a square and a bummer. It sucks, man. He sucks so bad.
And it's like his new stepdad, and like this is played in the movie like it's fucking Oliver Twist or something. But like he's got a cool stepdad who grows weed. And they have video games and shit. So it's just like, well, what more do you need to grow up in America? Not much. And then his new stepbrother is like, hey, want us to get high, man? And he's like, no, he'd rather watch CNN and then fuck up his mom's piss test. Okay, like,
He said
you guys
it's a gateway drug.
Yeah, he says a gateway drug.
He calls it a gateway drug, little fucking dork.
But like,
And whip it.
Okay, so,
He's
like-
scared of whippets.
well, he should be. Those should be. You get the death penalty for doing those. But like, okay, so like you alluded to it earlier, Tom. But like, there's a whole thing where like his mom needs him to piss in a cup for her job, and like, did he smoke weed with his friend, and that's why he didn't want to pee in the cup because he knew his piss would fuck up her test? Because like that's never resolved. He never admits to smoking weed with his stepbrother, and then he does give the piss, but then like I guess it doesn't come back dirty. So I guess he didn't smoke weed. Like that was just never very well explained. The weed smoking aspect of this movie,
Right.
But like a little bitch, like even if I assume he had clean piss, he was like, "No, I'm not going to pee in a cup for my mom, so she can keep her job." Because I want to teach her a lesson about
Who do
being
you think
responsible.
buys the fucking potato chips, you fat little shit?
Right. This is the thing about the book that is consistent with the movie. The book is basically just slandering his mother. And like the very first episode we ever did on our show, we just called it J.D. Vance is a snitch. Because that's all this book is. He's just laying out all of his family's dirty laundry and secrets. But this does get into the politics of J.D. Vance. And this was, I think, preserved somewhat in the movie. I mean, he does share that sort of same view with Charles Murray. I mean, like, I was telling Tom this the other day. I was kind of doing some research. We had gone on Citations Needed, and we were talking about Hillbilly Elegy, and I was kind of doing some research, and I found this essay that Charles Murray wrote in the early 90s called The Coming White Underclass. It was published in the Wall Street Journal. And I mean, and if you read that essay, it is like the seed of Hillbilly Elegy, what eventually came the memoir. And the whole idea, like he says it in there, illegitimacy is the number one social problem of our time. Single white mothers, basically. And he basically says that if you want to be a single white mother, if you want to raise a child on your own, you should be shunned from society and literally have your child. He proposed cutting welfare to fund orphanages for the children of single mothers. I mean, like, so this, I think this gets into the,
And Clinton kind of fell in line with that.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I think this is kind of the I think this is kind of the sort of subversive message, like the kind of message at the root of both the book and maybe it's a little more subtle in the film, but basically, yeah, like single white mothers are the the epitome of just social evil.
Well, and you know what they did to my experience growing up, and I wrote about this, is that like they did, of course, have like 10th checks and all of these things that you could get if you, like myself, had a single teen mom and a single income. And then they transitioned away from that and transitioned towards child support enforcement laws. So you had tons of men, and there was a big campaign against deadbeat dads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that did not distinguish between people who were like mentally ill, people who couldn't get a job, people who wouldn't pay, because there's no way to distinguish between that. Because it's so much easier to be like, oh, you have to be a nuclear family and you have to be tied to this other person, no matter what their problems are forever, rather than just fund children's welfare broadly, universally. Every kid gets these resources and these checks and everything.
Yeah.
And like it really spiked the prison population. I mean, my dad was in and out of jail all the time, like for shit like that. And it's like the only thing that it ended up doing was giving my mom another job, which was tracking down my dad to ask for money he may or may not have had at the moment. It doesn't work. Like,
Yeah, but it's cheaper. Have you considered that? Because you get the money out of the dads instead of out of the budget.
taxpayers,
So
yeah.
you save a line item there. So
Yeah.
it's just smart. It's just smart policy making.
So as things move along in a rather, it's both a rapid clip, but what feels like it takes forever in the present day plot line, we get another flashback. And like, this is where it gets really embarrassing because it's like trying to show how, as we said earlier, JD's life could have taken another path. He falls into with the bad crowd. And by the bad crowd, it's just like a couple teenage kids who like drink a beer. And then they're like, hey, let's go do some, let's go break into where I work and fuck up some shit. And he's like, okay, we can take my grandma's car. And that is the height of his like teenage misdeeds. Is like he fucks up his grandma's car doing some hijinks with his friends. And that's when Mama Glenn Close is like, I'm taking you away from your mom. You need a strong hand to guide your young male life. So you stop hanging out with those loser friends and start applying yourself. And then there's a funny scene where he's like on the front porch with his friends and like Mama rolls up and she does anti-Polish racism to him.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, what's your name? What's your name? Kowalski? Why don't you screw in a light bulb, you fucking Polak? And he's like, Ma, those are my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's like,
I'll
I'll be cold in the ground before a Polish person.
There's a very good chance, too, that she did say something, we'll say ethnically insensitive, but it wasn't to a Polish person.
Yeah, maybe they soft sold that part of it. But then there's a really amazing scene in the present day plot line where like, okay, his mom has like he's pulled all the strings and gotten his mom a bed in this private rehab, and he's like maxed out all his credit cards to get her in there. And then she sees this and like she's offended by it because she doesn't want to feel, I don't know, in his debt or like a charity case to her dipshit asshole son. So she's like, nah, fuck this, I'm not going to rehab. And then he blows up at her and she's like, just take me to Ray's house. He's down by the Pioneer Chicken stand. And then they get to Ray's house, and Ray is like chucking all of her shit out of the window, and he's like, fuck you, you junkie whore, like stay out of my shit. And then JD like gets his man up, and he's like, what the fuck did you say to my mom? Why don't you fucking come down here and I'll kick your ass?
It's in his blood.
There's an amazing moment. You always finish a fight. Always finish a fight. And then there's an amazing moment of like pure literary exaggeration where like he runs into the dude's house and is banging on the door. And then the film cuts to show Ray behind the door take out a knife, and you're like, oh shit, it's about to go down. And then like it just cuts and JD leaves and like just walks out of the house without even kicking in the door.
The story there is
like,
that nothing
it
happened.
Just, that pure moment of invention. Yeah, that pure moment of invention just to give you like a little hint or indication that like his like, oh, this is some really dangerous fucked up shit that goes down in Middletown, Ohio. Where it's just, dude, that shit didn't
Suburb of
happen.
Cincinnati.
You don't know that guy had a knife behind the door. Shut the fuck up. So yeah, and then of course he has to drop off his mom at the Shooting Gallery Hotel, like the Blinking Light Motel, where he's just like, okay, all right, I'm gonna drop my mom off at this seedy motel on the outskirts of town, and then it's like really shocked to find out that she goes out to cop and fix, because it's like, yeah, no shit,
Yeah.
she's addicted
After
to
her
heroin.
sister
Like that's we can just leave her
described it
alone.
as-
Yeah.
Yeah, as a hotel she sometimes stays at.
So there's another really telling scene in this movie where it's just like in the A plot line of young JD, young fat boy. He's on the cusp of like drinking beer with his friends or getting a good grades on his algebra test. And the moment that like really like sort of stains his soul and like fixes him on like the right hand path in his life is having to see his grandmother ask the Meals on Wheels guy for like an extra portion of dinner because like she's struggling. And like that moment of his feeling of shame at like receiving charity or just like playing Game Boy on the couch while his grandmother's struggling is what fixes him to like straighten up and fly right. And like, and I guess like that's the political aspect of this is like J.D. Vance, the man, the lesson he took from that was not that like people need more help to get by in their lives. It's that when you give people help, you shame them. And that like they should be like frightened into working harder. Like that's his worldview.
There's one moment when he's in the car with his mama and he's telling her, why do anything? Mom was salutatorian of her class and look what happened to her. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like it just perfectly shows that most people will come up against this reality and say, well, I guess I have two paths here. I can either work hard and work my way out of this, or perhaps the solutions are political. Perhaps I can join up with other people and we can challenge our circumstances. But this movie is not at all, pushing that agenda. The agenda is very much...
It is what it is.
And what happened maybe between being salutatorian in high school and you sitting on the couch playing Game Boy? Did you think maybe there were events in her life?
Right.
And maybe some things that happened before that, which we later find out, he barely alludes to her fucking shitty childhood, something he doesn't find out until he's like an adult in college, which is like, how oblivious are you?
Yeah.
I gotta say too, he's really overrating the abilities of somebody that would be the salutatorian of Breathitt County High School. that's a whole other thing. Go Bobcats.
So yeah, and it's like so young JD is so ashamed by having to see his grandmother like take charity that like he's like, all right, fuck this, time to hit the books. And I swear to God, there is an inspirational Rocky style montage of him just getting good grades. That was some of the wackest shit I've ever seen.
And also doing his dishes.
Put on a movie.
It's a Jordan Peterson scene. He cleans his room.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. No, but it's just like he's like, getting strong now, and then like the big culmination of it is like, Mama, I got the best score on the algebra test out of anyone in my class. And then it's just like, JD, your life has changed. You're good now. Not like your piece of shit mom.
You followed the rules. You did good on the tests. Now you get your reward. You get your sugar cubes.
Who, by the way, saw me set Papa on fire as a little girl locked in a closet.
That was the other thing I laughed at. That was the other scene I laughed at because the way they shot it, with him like just falling off of the couch and just being like, oh boy, I'm on fire. It tickled me. I thought it was pretty. It was supposed to be very traumatic, but I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. Come on. Just set the dude on fire. That's a hell of an escalation.
Yeah.
So this is like this is like the last 20 minutes of the movie. And I started like noting for myself, like, what are the climactic movie moments here? What is the climax of this movie? And there's two moments. In the young JD plot, the climax of the movie is him throwing a Texas Instruments calculator out of a moving car. That's it. and his mama is like, I bought you that calculator. You better hope it's not broken. And then that's when she gives him like a heart-to-heart, like come to Jesus moment about like, do you want to be someone, JD, or do you want to be on welfare? And he's like, okay, I'll go get the calculator. And like, and that's it. And then the other climactic moment is after he's like squirted his mom's fix down the toilet. He's like, I really hope you get better. Bye. Just dry
God,
out
yes.
10 hours.
He's like,
fucking.
I want you to get better. Have fun vomiting for the next fucking like 48 hours and having the shakes and sweating yourself dehydrated while no one is around you. Except I do know that you can get a heroin here, and they'll definitely give you a deal for something.
Yeah, Jesus, that's dark. That is like, is it just like
it's dark?
As like a guy in his 20s, he still thinks like pot is a gateway drug, and that like if you just stop someone from doing heroin, like that'll save them. As long as you just get rid of their heroin, but leave them in the exact same conditions that led them to do it in the first place. And it's like also she's, as Amber pointed out, she's gonna go through a withdrawal. She may die if she doesn't fucking fix up. So like maybe you should like get off your high horse and just sort of like help your mom. And like she's already like, you can't get her into rehab. You just doesn't have health insurance. So maybe just like trying to make sure that she doesn't OD again, but just sort of accept the fact that when you have an addiction, it is something that like you cannot be reasoned out of or guilted into like doing something better.
At one point, he tries to pawn his mother off on his sister who has children in the house. As if he is not the most obvious fucking person. You know what? Take her with you. Put her in the fucking car. You got a long road trip. That's like, it's going to be unpleasant, but that's a pretty good way to keep like a withdrawing junkie occupied. And then you do your fucking interview. Just put up a little sign. Be like, my mom's okay. The air conditioning's on. I cracked the window. Her favorite music is on. Yeah. And then just come back out. She probably can't like take care of your mother.
Amber.
Story
and
about
hold on a minute.
Terrible values.
You say this, but if he misses that interview for that internship, he'll have to wait 2 weeks to have another interview for a different internship.
God.
Like that's the thing. Like there's no stakes here. He graduated from Yale. He's there with the fancy people. He's in. It's just a matter of the job. This specific interview means nothing in a grand scheme, and he's willing to drop his fiending mom off at a Ramada Inn, basically, with a fucking security guard, so that he could go do it. He's a monster.
Yeah.
The entire,
Amber,
by the way, movie struck me as this is him internally justifying why he actually had to be a piece of shit son.
Yep.
Yeah.
She had it coming.
Yep.
She had it coming.
He didn't even do a
bad
good
mom.
job. He didn't even do a good job of portraying an addict family member as insufferably as they can be. Because let's be honest, they're not fun. It really makes you not fun and unsympathetic. He didn't even like try and sell it as, oh, she was a monster. She stole my shit. She like physically attacked me. Like she was the best kind of sad junkie, like where she was erratic and in pain and felt bad. Like that's the easiest kind to deal with.
Right.
And he still couldn't fucking make time for her.
Amber, during that scene where like he's trying to pawn his withdrawal mother off on his sister who has a family, I just had a note when I was watching it. I was like, take her to the law interview, drive her back to Connecticut. Humorous hijinks will ensue. It'll be like a sitcom. It's just like JD has a fancy law internship, but also a mom addicted to heroin. Wah, wah.
Hey, there's drama
what
stakes
forks will she
narrative
use?
momentum. That's a good idea.
Would have made an amazing movie. A kind of mother.
But he would have to
mother-son
care
thing
about
where
someone
we could-
else
Yes.
for that to happen,
Right.
and
Yes.
that can't happen.
Well,
Yes.
once again, why would you make a movie? Multiple times during this, I wish I could have like washed my brain of any knowledge of J.D. Vance and Hillbilly Elegy before I watched this, because I would love to know what just a normal person who has no prior knowledge of any of this, just watching this movie, they would have no idea what it's about. You have to know so much going into it. It's like, what is the story here? I don't even understand. I mean, at the end, there's a montage of all of the all of the main points. It's like, if you're at that point in a film, if you're on the editing floor and someone's telling you like, I mean, the only way for us to really end this is like you're gonna have to do a montage of all the pivotal moments. You can just see Ron Howard just being like, "Fuck, all right, I'll do it." Like it's just like if you have to do that, it's just.
Did anyone see the Alexander Payne movie Nebraska?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
Great film.
Beautiful movie, and also I like made my mom watch it because it's a great family comedy. that is also very dark. And you start out with these just abhorrent people and his parents, and he's trying to sort of figure them out. And then slowly you figure out why they are that way. And it's not a excuse. It's just an explanation. It's like you can't moralize that kind of like trauma. You just have to fucking grow up and know that, there but for the grace of God. This is someone who both like doesn't believe that there are reasons that someone might have problems or be like someone, and two, is completely disinterested in the reasons or that person's past or anything whatsoever. Like someone with no curiosity about his own mother, or he throws in at the end that this one incident that she saw that he only knows about as an adult, where her mom set her dad on fire.
Yeah. There's no environment in this film. None. No
context.
The only time they really interface with any world outside of theirs, there's that scene on the porch where his mom's trying to apologize and the neighbors are fighting next door, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, they're at it again." It's just like, that's
people
one
are
of the
set
only
pieces.
Yeah, that's one of the only times you even get any kind of environment.
So, like I said, I was trying to clock what are the climactic moments of this movie, and I already mentioned the scene where he throws a calculator out of the window. But the real climax of the movie is in the B plot, where young man JD, after leaving his mother to withdraw in a seedy motel, makes the 10-hour drive back to Connecticut to get to his law firm interview on time. And in the car ride back to Connecticut, he has he has a cell phone call with his girlfriend, who we only really see her in phone calls. And on the phone call, as he's driving, is the moment where he realizes, he's like, I just wish there was some way that people can know how much Mama meant to me. And that's like, ding, the climax of the movie is him getting the idea to write the book Hillbilly Elegy that would one day be lauded by august thinkers such as Rod Dreher and David Brooks.
Right.
Who attended his baptism, by the way, when he converted to Catholicism.
Okay, Amber, really though, how much of a real hillbilly can you be if you can stomach converting to vile Roman papacy?
Whore of Babylon. Never. I remember when I first moved to New York and I had a boyfriend, and he was like, what would your evangelical grandparents think about you dating a Jew? And I'm like, oh, they'd be fine with it. You're not Catholic.
That's right.
This car drive contains one of the few overtly political moments in the film. She's telling him, they're having this conversation with his, his fiance, girlfriend, or whatever. She's like, my father had to come over here from Pakistan or something, and you're supposed to draw the parallel of her family coming over to this country and his family coming out of the mountains and into the civilized world. And it is I think what the message is, and it's reiterated at the very beginning in the opening monologue, in the scene where he gets mad about redneck, the guy saying redneck, the guy goes, it's the American dream. And in this scene, it's just the most vapid message for a movie. Could you, putting this movie out right now, you know what I mean? 250,000 people dead from a virus, food bank lines stretched around blocks. Nobody believes this. Nobody believes this. It's just I don't know. It's just the most vapid pro-American movie you could imagine.
And another thing I think is weird about the book and the movie is how that the defining thing about being from Appalachia or whatever is your relationship to coal, and especially a guy that would later become an AEI stooge. There's just nothing about anybody that was involved in the coal industry or anything like that. And I just think it's a weird omission to even engage Appalachia without engaging coal mining whatsoever.
It comes up in the very first line, too, where they're like, oh, coal people. And he said, no, manufacturing, which is interesting because most Appalachians, my family moved up specifically because they shut down coal mines. And it's even though that's when they got manufacturing jobs. That's because they were like, well, shit, we're fucked now. That's also when they stopped voting because there was no coal candidate.
Right.
So I just want the final scene of the movie is just another snatch of his absolutely unbearable voiceover narration. And he's got his crisp suit. He's waiting in the lobby of the law firm, and they're like, JD Vance, and he's like, yes, sir, right this way. And he sort of strides into his job interview. And then the voiceover narration, this is the last scene in the movie. To sum it all up is he basically just says, yeah, my family's not perfect, but whose is? The end.
And then the like, here's how everyone's doing. His mom has apparently been clean for 6 years, and she doesn't get a redemption story or anything. She doesn't get credit for that or anything. This whole thing is just weird Oedipal anxieties. It's not about him loving his mama. It's about him hating his mom.
Yes, you're exactly right, Amber. And he deifies Mama because she's not his mother. And she's the perfect woman that his mother has failed in every way. And it's like, the Glenn Close character, she's not so fucking perfect, and nor does she love him any less than his mom does. She's just maybe a little less unstable because she doesn't have to deal with drug addiction. But the deification of Glenn Close is done entirely at the expense of Amy Adams and her character. She has to be dragged through the fucking mud to make Glenn Close's character seem like this sainted hero of his life.
Which also doesn't, again, there's a cultural values thing here that isn't represented, and but if I talked such garbage around my mother, around my mama, who isn't even her mother, she would smack me in the back of the fucking head. There is a sense of you have to, your mother is the authority in this family, and she loves you, and she is doing her fucking best.
In the thing where it shows, all the photos of JD growing up and where everybody is now, it doesn't mention
growing out.
Yes, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't mention that he's a venture capitalist. It just says that he wrote this memoir. It doesn't say anything about what he went on.
Himself.
The guy that I was watching this just starts going into it where he's like, y'all ever heard of Peter Thiel? I'm gonna be one of his venture capitalist investors when I grow up. I'm gonna invest in a company called Mithril. What them nerds? It's from a J.R.R. Tolkien. There's a few references too where he has Magic the Gathering cards. He was clearly
he
nerd. But it's if you tried to explain his success
boss
in the business world, it's building blood harvesting machines for Peter Thiel's Blood Boys. That's your investment.
Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what he's doing because, all these movies now, these type of movies, all movies in a way, but this specific type, they are around reflecting the viewer. J.D. Vance is the viewer, so that means that his success is, of course, it's taken for granted as what you're supposed to be rooting for because you're rooting for yourself. You're validating your own decisions in life. Yeah. And so just as it doesn't matter what you're doing because you're you, it doesn't matter what J.D. Vance is doing because you're supposed to relate to him because you're the kind of fucking anxious striver that he is. You're the one who absorbed the same etiquette lessons and the same value system that he did and is pursuing the same life that he's doing at the same contemptuous distance from your family who only really slow you down and hinder you that he has.
Yep, it's Hans Zimmer scored with fiddles. Literally.
No, yes, absolutely.
I guess the last question I want to ask you guys is, but the book was a huge sensation and is probably gonna was a lot better received than the movie, which has landed fairly tepidly. And the film does blunt the harder angles of J.D. Vance's actual conservative ideology. But I guess I'm wondering, both the book and the movie was made by Hollywood liberals, and the book was very rapturously reviewed by, big city newspaper and book review liberal types, and it was very, very much adopted as this is an important book that everyone should read. And whether it's the book or the movie, what do you we touched on it briefly, but what do you think liberals see in a story like this that they feel is they can adapt as sort of part of their own, or miss the sort of right-wing valence to all of this? Do they miss it, or do they just adopt it as their own, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think what it is that they are now able to, their discomfort with poor white people is that they don't have an oppression narrative that can contextualize their bad behavior that they are repelled by, but that they can't condemn, or at least they don't think, they scold themselves for condemning because, they don't know no better. But there's no narrative. They're white people, like them. Other people, their oppression narrative exists. Their lived experience narratives are out there that they could watch and experience vicariously. Now they have a white version of that. Now they have like a white identity politics story of oppression to sort of contextualize the regrettable behavior of the underclass of the white persuasion.
Well, and it allows them to be the good white people and to think of themselves as the good, sophisticated, liberal white people, and completely remove class from the discussion, because they're like, look, I like this one. He's one of the good ones. He
Exactly.
did it right.
Which is the way that they treat all all oppressed groups, all underclasses. They tokenize them by absorbing these sort of narratives of success and striving. Like, yes, things are unfair, but what really matters is you applying yourself. And if you apply yourself, you can succeed. And the ones who don't, it's too bad. And you can talk about the things that make it harder for them to do it, and that gives you a sense of sort of condescending understanding of them. But at the end of the day, they can't be anything other than what they are, and their failure to thrive is just the regrettable byproduct of their inability to rise to the moment, the way that apple cheek go getter like JD Vance does.
Yeah, they can. You too could succeed if you could just be a responsible adult and throw away your mother.
Yeah.
I think that's correct. I think that me and Tom, we've talked a lot about this on the show over the years, but there has been a concerted effort in the last 15, I'd say 10, 15, 20 years or so to carve out this very specific like white ethnic identity of hillbilly. I mean, we all know that like obviously like travel writers in the 19th century were, calling people that lived in the mountains hillbillies for their own specific class agendas and everything. But it seems to me now that they're doing this precisely because they can elide the class structure of these places. So if you can just lump everybody into a hillbilly category, you can have poor hillbillies, but you can also have rich ones, and you can give
Duck
the rich
Dynasty,
ones,
Bundys,
Or, I mean, like you see this a lot. Tom and I have worked in the sort of NGO world for a while, the nonprofit world. You see people saying stuff like, "Don't define Appalachia by its poverty." Well, if you take that to its logical conclusion, then you're just going to start, be like, "Oh, there's rich people here too." I mean. Well, what do the rich people benefit from? And what do they, what is their role in community? I don't know. It's a very concerning thing.
It's a bit also like when the libs got mad at Trump for saying like Haiti is a shithole country. And they're like, Haiti is beautiful. And it's like, yeah, Appalachia is beautiful, like especially the parts that haven't been like turned to Mordor by mountaintop removal. But the problem isn't that it's not celebrated enough for its beauty and culture and people. The problem is that it is a shithole for a number of fucking terrible economic reasons that have existed since, like, not just the closing of the mines, but, like, I don't know, the fucking Tennessee Valley Authority, which God knows they needed it. But, like, it's like people getting mad because someone said something rude, but not getting mad because a place has been, like, systematically exploited and treated as a third world within the first world for a very long time. And it's like, no, like the misery is the thing that jumps out at people. And like, that's not unreasonable.
I think it's a function of the Democrats just completely abandoning a lot of these places. Like we had Mike Davis on the show this past week, and he was talking about like, you when's the last time you heard a Democrat talking about poverty or even Appalachia in general? I mean, just like they've completely abandoned these places. It's
such a weird thing for the Democrats to pun on because Appalachia, I mean, it's something we talk about a lot. Appalachia was probably, arguably, the most reliable blue wall in the country until like Bush's second election. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like Jimmy Carter won West Virginia against Reagan. You know what I mean? It's like, It hadn't been that long ago. Clinton won Kentucky twice. I mean, it's like, it's just such a strange.
It's also an enormous region. Like from the North Georgia woods to fucking Pennsylvania. Like this is a huge. There's also different cultures within it. Whatever.
Oh yeah, no, it's massive. It's very funny though when you sort of press these people, like the sort of liberals that I was talking about, who are invested in like this creation of this very certain kind of idea of an image of a hillbilly. It's like. If you were to actually press them on, are you talking about people in upstate New York? Because that's Appalachia too. I mean, they would absolutely say no.
It's very weird. They mean Kentucky, which is also why he used Kentucky and didn't just say, I'm from the Appalachian part of Ohio, which is, I mean, like you go there, it's like, yeah, this is just everything from the accents to the way the houses that get built and everything. But he needed the thing that pinged, so he had to talk about my mom and papa.
Well, taking it back to the film, weirdly enough, I was, like most people, was preparing to watch this and to sort of be bemused or whatever by the sort of stereotypes and representations. All that. The movie actually kind of passed on that. It didn't, I think you said this at the beginning, Will. It spent maybe
really
5 minutes. Yeah, it spent 5 minutes maybe on Appalachia, and then it just kind of moved on.
Here's some ignorant coal smudge reprobates, but now back to our regular scheduled program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like they were too lazy to put in the texture of offensive stereotypes.
Right. There was, once again, I kind of feel like there's just too much to even cover in this. Once again, I wonder, why keep the character of J.D. Vance? He's so unlikable. Did nobody call him? He's awful. Why not take some, if you're the screenwriter, why not take some artistic license and cast an actually likable main character? Or maybe he has a quirky best friend or something. You know what I mean? I don't know why
he would have to look into his family and talk about them, and he does not seem interested in other people. But I don't know about his grandmother, but my mama was one of 9 and grew up without indoor plumbing or electricity. That is a much more interesting story than I became a Brooklyn podcaster.
I had the same thought. There's so many interesting people in the world, and we got a biopic on this guy?
Yeah.
This guy?
Literally everyone in his family has a more interesting story. I found myself being like, God, I wonder what the sister's up to.
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about Ray.
I just kept thinking of Ray from, Twin Peaks. Just a city guy living above a convenience store.
It's classic.
I was thinking about Ray from Vice Principals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Ray.
Shout out Shea Wiggum, the god. All right, so I think that about does it for Hillbilly Elegy. I want to thank Tom and Terrence from the Trillbillies for watching this terrible movie and coming on the show to talk about it. But for our listeners, if they're not already fucking with the Trillbillies and they want more Trill and Hill in their lives, where should they go?
We are on iTunes, all the places you can get your podcast, Spotify, Stitcher. We're also on Patreon. So check us out there. Usually search for Trillbillies or Trillbilly Workers Party. We should pop right up for you.
Links to all of those will be in the show description. Once again, Tom and Terrence, I want to thank you for hanging out with us.
Thanks for coming.
And that was the Hillbilly Elegy, guys. Till next time, roll that fiddle music.